sometimes when you're at the very bottom, you're looking up to see the curve. So
Okay.
I was living in a travel trailer with more holes in it than a radiator, with me and the other guys that didn't speak English, were mowing grass for a living. I was so poor they didn't rob me. They felt sorry for me. They left food at my door. So in 1985, I had a stepbrother, owned a small boutique regulation firm, FINRA firm in Dallas. Came by, I hadn't seen him in 4 or 5 years. He goes, man, you're pathetic. You're skinny. You got fever. You're broke. He goes, why don't you come finish college off up in Dallas? I said, what am I going to do? He said, I'll get your license and you can become a broker and learn how to sell investments to millionaires. I go, I can't get $50 out of my parents. What are you talking about? Yeah. So fast forward, I ended up getting my license in 1985, worked for a small firm. 2 years later, I realized they were nice. My stepbrother had good intentions, but he couldn't find oil in a Jiffy Lube. So I decided to break apart, go do my own thing. 2 years later, I had my own investment firm called Eckard Investment Services, built that firm out, raised about $100 million from 1992 to 95. The sponsor I was representing sold out those assets to a public company, and then I started my own first oil company in 1995. And then that evolution began with the idea of how do I capitalize oil and gas projects when you're dealing with much larger, much more mammoth-sized companies. And let's face it, oil and gas from the retail side is a dirty business. It's mostly full of liars, crooks, con artists. If you go down the who's who the last 30 years, Dallas told what was called Con Man Row. 500 companies in town, 450 of them had their desk on wheels because they were moving from office to office when the SEC showed up. So it was a tough business. But from a pure industry side, it was also extremely tough because by the time we got to 2005 or 6, we were probably drilling 60% dry holes. And then on the 40% you hit, maybe 35% were being mechanical failures due to incompetency. I was about to go start mowing grass again like I did in college. And so the iteration of my business has been the tenacity to stay the course, the open-mindedness to see the macro view, and having gone through several technology changes and looking at where the industry was, I was always a firm believer that if you could find out how to get traction, and if you could find a path to take, the profitability for your investing partners and for your company would be enormous because the attrition rate was substantial. So you saw one attrition rate in like 1985, everybody got the big boom, went away. Then you had the early 1990s, everybody went away. 3D seismic came along, everybody got excited again. Then 1997 crash occurred, another 30% went away. By the time I got to 2008, probably 60% of the professionals I knew and friends that I had were retired broker driving trucks. They were done. And that same thing has occurred again in 2015, again in 2019 and 20, and right now you're having another massive amount of people, intellectual assets leaving the industry, because when Exxon bought Pioneer, they said, hey, thanks guys, we don't need 150,000 people, here's your retirement, go away. So having that foresight, I said, what I've got to do is I've got to be the middleman between private capital, private investors, and the industry. We're very tiny as individuals, but if I can aggregate that capital, I can probably go toe-to-toe with a lot of the bigger companies. So we did that for about 15 or 20 years. We just couldn't get traction. I used to say to my staff all the time, I said, if we could control the product, money's no question. The money's there, it's just the product's terrible. You can't just keep drilling dry holes. People just get really tired of losing money. And the good deals never left Houston. The good deals were between 3 oil companies. So you tried to work your way into a good deal. It was either front-loaded with costs, seismic, leases, you just couldn't afford it. And so whatever crumbs fell on the table were actually crumbs, and they weren't very good. So I've had a lot of successes, had a lot of failures, a lot of dry holes, and finally with the shale and the fracking, I could see back in the late 1990s when George Mitchell started discovering the Barnett Shale here under Dallas, I said, that technology is going to work. And that technology is going to change the industry, but it's big, it's expensive, and it's really early stage. So I participated a little bit, I watched it evolve, and by about probably 2014 or 15, I said, that's the direction I'm going to go. I just couldn't figure out how to get my toe in the water. It was just enormous in size. The shift was just off the chart. Finally, when the crash occurred, 2018, when everybody was told by their bankers, all your capital's being cut off, you're no longer going to go drill wells. You're going to drill them, complete them, book the value to the books, pay your dividends, pay off your debt, and lift the value of your company. No more of this delay. And I could tell you about why they delayed later. But I saw that as a massive window of opportunity. So all my competition was just told, you get no more allowance until you go clean your room, clean up your balance sheet, pay your dividends, pay down your debt. And so now the acquisition field was wide open. And that was because I had 35 years of experience watching the door open and shut. And this time, when the door opened, when I started in 2018 on this particular iteration, I might be offering a price for a mineral acre. There might have been 15 other offers higher. I said, man, we're never going to get in this door. Within about 6 months, I'd send an offer out and it was accepted. I go, why? Well, you're the only one that made an offer. I go, I went from 20 to 1. What happened? And then COVID really opened the door for us. During COVID the window was wide open, and that's when we hit the ground running. So in 2019, I had about 120 private partners. I had 8 employees. We were in a room about this size. And when COVID hit, we got to work at 6 in the morning. We worked till midnight and we cranked. And here we are 5.5 years later, going on 6 years. We got 1.1 billion of assets we've acquired. We got interest in 8,500 wells, 90,000 net mineral acres, have our own exploration company drilling wells right now. We bought a pipeline company in the Gulf of America last year, and we're on target to do about 300 million this year, and our short-term goal is to do 5 billion over the next 4 years in private capital. So that's a long way from 5 years ago.